I wonder if we all, many of us, carry within us all the time the desire to find a cause about which we can get angry, to which we can adhere, screw our courage to the sticking place, as it were. And, we look at angry crowds, hordes in, Russia or in the United States on the right, and we look at that and we say, well, that's what's going on. It seems to me what's going on with them. But what I've noticed, those who do not learn from history are doomed to, dang it, what is that? Ha ha ha. I am being treated to a fantasy, a right royal one. The latest iteration manifest on Substack begins with, it's a paraphrase because I couldn't re-find the post. It's such annoying, but the latest iteration, we Americans used to fight for heroes against tyrants. Okay. Against Hitler. And now with Trump, we are allied with Hitler. Putin. Okay. So that's fair enough. I think that's a totally fair enough thing. But I have to ask you, since this mythological good war of the second World War, what about Thieu of South Vietnam, Batista of Cuba, Pinochet of Chile, Saddam Hussein, yup, he was our guy, the Shah of Iran, Zionism since 1948, Marcos of the Philippines, Perón of Argentina, apartheid South Africa, till the very end, the various slaughterers of Saudi Arabia. All our allies. It's a short list. There are more. And I'm less impressed with your Disney Zelensky, but the jury is still out. So there's this thing, with the Zelensky and the Putin and all the rest of it. We look at this chap, this man who's tremendous courage, without question. And, he's committed. And it's not what he is. It's not what Putin is. It's our desire to flop one way or the other. Our inner burning rages, which seem somehow to be, it's a bit like an actor. You can tell when an actor is a very good method actor because they've when they come to the door and somebody tells them that their husband has died and they do a substitution, and you realize quite quickly they're actually crying about their dog who died 20 years ago when they were a kid. It's totally disconnected from the fictional husband, right? And that's what I have. And this is a human trait. I'm sure I have it. I'm positive I have it. And I'm positive I have, it's overwhelmed me at times. But it is to be guarded against. So this chap is speaking as if the North America, the United States, has always come in heroically on the side of the people resisting Hitler. And that's just not true. The great iniquity of the U.S. resource distribution began with Reagan, the bad guys, but was ably escalated by Clinton and Obama as if, it was natural, to levels undreamt. The trick has roots. Jefferson Thomas blamed George III for the sin of slavery. Don't laugh, he did. Context, historic. Tiberius Gracchus, a young aristocrat war hero in 137 BC, returned from Spain to Rome, big battle in Spain, where apparently he made a deal with the local Spaniards that saved several thousand legionnaires dying. And he's traveling back through northern Italy, and he sees these huge wine plantations owned by Roman patricians, and this was a new phenomenon, but totally empty of the homesteads of the Roman citizens who would have normally have been the grape pickers. They would have been the harvesters of this wine. They were all gone, and they were all replaced by Gallic slaves, bought from the Gauls with, you guessed it, wine. And the patricians were now fabulously rich. The farms of the Roman soldiers on campaign for years had been taken over by the aristocratic sestertii billionaires of the day to grow more wine. Does this sound familiar at all? Stop me if it does. Good thing there was wheat in Tunis. The Roman workers of the land had been driven to poverty, to impoverished lives in the slums of Rome, just like with the enclosures in Britain, 1604 to 1915, had driven the English commoner from the land where he had lived for several thousand years to the poverty and disease of the city and the glories of factory life. He became an immediately exploitable community. They became an immediately exploitable factory worker. And they were exploited. Agriculture cannot outsource a natural habit of wealthy interests 2,000 years later. So slaves were brought in, and yes, rather like the founding of the US, great wealth and civic myth was created. Gracchus got his land reform via a neat loophole in Roman law, and was then assassinated by, I believe he wasn't even 30, by the rich men of the Senate. 80 odd years before you know who was assassinated. He had betrayed his class. The common story of Caesar is Republican heroes destroy the ambitious king for the sake of and freedom of the people. Horseshit. I'm sure Trump has some version of regal ambition, but why be a king if you can be a president? Act like a king and then retire. Kings have huge upon the king. Let us our lives, It's all through the mythology. They have tremendous responsibility, or maybe one of the ghastly children, a baron even. My quibble is that if Caesar was bad, he was a child among the Roman Republican aristocrats. The mess they made has been neutralized by the cunning Shakespeare producers. I don't blame Shakespeare. I have directed it, and I know of its bovine misinterpretations, as I know the corruption of the US faux democracy and recognize the old trick, blame the overweening autocrat. And I love this idea. I love this idea that you've got a community of people who, as in the Greeks, you had the aristocratic families who ruled the Peloponnese, who ruled Attica. And what they were afraid of was that one of them should become the tyrant. So one of this rather small group of already powerful rich people would separate himself from the rest and then crush the rest. That's the level that we're at. That is what the founding of the Americas were. It was the group, the 1% saying, we don't want one of the 1% to rule, we want to rule. And we're still there, guys. We're still there. After Gracchus, political assassination became common in Rome. I would love to ask the founders, capital F, which particular facet of Romanism they admired so, and I've just given it to you. It was this extraordinary hubristic idea that this community of men, these noble men, were the ones who were born to rule the rest of us and to become rich wine growers in northern Italy and to etc. 30% of Rome was slaves. Looking back from now to then and observing with some awe posts like the Substack one, it looks like the Republican model is a stroke of genius. It allows for the rich to remain rich and endows their wealth with virtù. No E, virtù. Arete, as the Greeks would say. Exploitation of the lowest class is an economic truth to them, and the middle-class legionnaire who created the empire is entirely disposable. Does this sound familiar? These silly myths go a long way. The American male thinks of ancient Rome every day. It's a joke, but it isn't. So now we have Trump resistors creating a past of innocence and greatness to which these liberals wish to return. Oh, them great days of Jim Crow when we opposed Hitler. He does serve us well, cleansing what went before, during, and after. This creationism is a blindness that does no one no good. I think the argument should be made that just as the Roman ruling class continues to abuse the Roman working class until they threw their lot in with the incipient tyrant, the US ruling class has done the same thing. Exactly. MAGA is in the grip of a silly myth, so is its opposition. It's super convenient. We ignore the undemocratic mess of a government that has acquiesced to and enabled the greatest wealth divide in history, exploiting the enclosure policies of Clinton trade agreements and Obama's rewarding of bankers, and find our latest king to fear, the king who has generally continued the policies and intent of the aptly capitalized to distinguish from the real notion, the Democrats. Politics of blame the other guy, the one you created. Gracchus died horribly after genuine heroism. Brutus and Cassius and the rest of the insurrection failed, probably because their self-regard and disdains left them exposed after the assassination. Since the American Revolution, impressive work has been done to tell the tale of heroic Republicans overthrowing tyrants. Sic semper tyrannis, isn't it? Believe it if you can, but don't throw WW2 as an example of virtue while ignoring the murderous bastards the US has dabbled with since and before. The claim that deeply disappointing Democratic majorities created the inevitability of Donald Trump and the evasion of responsibility is epic, like some Roman fantasy. If this leads you listeners to think I am promoting one-man rule and condoning Trump, that is just your lack of imagination. To pick on the poor, worn-out mafia model, do I hate the Don more than the Cosa Nostra he currently rules? No. Is the US Cosa Nostra? Yes.